Well, speaking of the condition of anonymity, a UN official and a Western diplomat have revealed that talks are underway for a temporary ceasefire in Gaza in exchange for the release of hostages held by Hamas. Well, the deal would reportedly enable more aid, including some fuel, to enter Gaza. The deal's believed to be being brokered by Qatar, Egypt and the United States. The Palestinian Health Ministry says 8 Palestinians have been killed during an Israeli raid on Jenin in the north of the occupied West Bank. Since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war, 150 Palestinians have been killed in clashes with Israeli forces there. Well, 1,000 others have also been arrested. Israel says most were affiliated with Hamas. Well, today we can talk more about the death toll in Gaza with Emily Tripp, who is Director of Airwars. Now, Airwars closely monitors conflicts to help improve the understanding of how recent wars have impacted civilians. Emily, you're speaking to us from London. Welcome to France 24. Thanks for speaking to us today. The Biden administration then has expressed doubt about the accuracy of the death toll announced by the health ministry in Gaza. The UN, though, has said there's no reason to doubt those figures. Airwars, your organisation, says that so far these figures tally up. What more can you tell us, Emily?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on the programme. I mean, so we've been looking at civilian casualty across conflicts for the past 10 years or so, including we looked at the Gaza campaign in May 2021. We matched up the health ministry data from 2021. I can say it was fairly accurate. I think what we're seeing now, I mean, the scale of harm is such that it's very difficult to get independent verification in on the thousands of deaths that the Palestinian Health Ministry have reported. But on a kind of anecdotal level, what I can tell you is that from case by case, we're matching up incident by incident the names that we identify, and we're finding them, the majority of them, in the Palestinian Health Ministry data. That includes, if I may explain, a case that we published yesterday, 9 different families. We had about 60 civilians that we documented were killed, and we were able to find 37 of those names in the Ministry of Health database with matching, ages and demographic details.
Emily, another concrete incident would be the Israeli airstrike on or near a market in Jabalia, the refugee camp there, which resulted in between 50 and 69 civilians killed, at least 15 of those children, 6 women. Those were the reports that we had. What does Airwars know about that?
I think this is a case, unfortunately, it seems extremely tragic and exceptional, given the numbers that you've just mentioned. But actually what we're seeing is that this is now quite common. We're seeing cases more and more like this of dozens of individuals killed and injured, and often in family units. So that was a case that's, again, we were able to match up a lot of those names to the Ministry of Health database, and unfortunately it's just becoming more and more common.
I mean, you've spoken about the difficulty. There's been internet cut, very little electricity. How does your organisation go about carrying out this independent research in situations which you've said are quite complex?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's really challenging for sure. Our organisation, we've developed this methodology, as I said, for almost 10 years, and we look at every single open source claim of harm. So actually, the clip that you played just before this interview, where you interviewed the father of a child that had died, for us that becomes a piece of information. So we gather a report like that alongside all of the other reports of harm, and we kind of put them together in a library of sorts. To make sure that we get kind of accurate data. Of course, with the internet shut down, this is really challenging, but another huge challenge has been the organizations such as Al-Mazan, who carry out on-the-ground kind of witness testimonies. They haven't been able to do that work because of the access limitations, so that's a huge challenge. But what we're seeing in this conflict, as we've documented, even in the hardest to reach areas in conflicts such as Yemen, family members will often post about their friends and their relatives who've been killed, and the majority of sources that we're getting getting at the moment are really from those family testimonies who are saying, here's my cousin who was killed in this strike, or I tried to collect my my brother from the rubble. These are the sources that we're seeing now, and that we've seen kind of consistently across all.
How much would your organisation rely on larger humanitarian organisations like Amnesty, like the United Nations, who have said themselves that they are struggling in this conflict because the situation is so difficult?
Yeah, it's a real challenge. For us, all of the sources that we see, we kind of put them on the same level. So if Amnesty can't access somewhere, it's the same for us as if an individual can't access somewhere. For us, organizations like Amnesty who are able to do on-the-ground witness testimonies and collect that information is obviously extremely valuable. But there is also a huge amount of information that's online that individuals themselves are posting. It's not necessarily through formal channels. It's not necessarily through a kind of formalized interview or a long report that you might see on Human Rights Watch, but all of that information is extremely valuable, and that's what enables us to kind of continue our work even in the most challenging of information.
Emily, what kind of impact does it have when I spoke earlier about the Biden administration expressing doubt over the accuracy in death tolls? Does that have an impact on the work that you're doing?
It certainly does. I mean, this is not the first time the Biden administration have, doubted civilian harm figures. For us as an organization, we were really founded to calculate the real cost of the human war in the war against ISIS. And that's something that, the Americans have never kind of fully accepted that full death toll, that they have kind of accepted minimal casualties. I think the real challenge for us is that when you doubt statistics, or when you doubt civilian harm and you doubt those tolls, really the people who lose in that situation are the individuals. And I think it turns what could be a moment for the world to turn to individuals who are suffering with kind of dignity and empathy into a very contested space that comes about, focusing on statistics and numbers.
I mean, just a final question with you, Emily, because we are unfortunately running out of time. We've said it time and time again, it's incredibly difficult to get information out of the Gaza Strip. What is one message that you'd like to leave us with today as an organisation who are, checking these figures, these high figures?
I think my message would be listen to the local voices, listen to the individuals who are posting about their family members and their colleagues and, their doctors and their teachers. Listen to those voices. They're posting that online. It's for anyone to see. And I think that will tell you a kind of real toll of this conflict, much more than any kind of mediated comment.
Emily Tripp, you're Director of Airwars, speaking to us from London. Thanks very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.